Ladies and gentlemen, from Doctor Who, the woman who played the first Romana, Mary Tamm.
Hello, Horace. Nice to see you again. Well, how is everybody? Tired? Did you all go to the party last night? Was it good? No?
It's marvelous. You left too early.
I did leave too early, but I'm jet lagged. I've got an excuse. Well, there are not many of you here, but I'm sure the ones that are here, the hardcore fans, are going to ask some really interesting questions. So, anybody got a question?
How tall was Dallas?
I'm sorry?
How tall was Dallas?
How tall was Dallas?
Dallas.
Oh, the Daleks. The Daleks. I don't know because I've never worked with the Daleks. No. I did the Key to Time season, which was 26 episodes, but there were no Daleks involved in that. Sorry. I think I've seen them. I think in relation to my height, they were about here. So I don't know how tall that is. Right, anybody else got a question? You're going to help me out later, aren't you? Yes, gentleman here. What's your name?
I'm Lee.
Lee. Hi, Lee. Hi.
I was always wondering why you didn't do more, because you were really great on it.
Thank you.
Just so few episodes, you don't see a lot of you. Why didn't you only sign for so long, and how come they replaced you?
Well, I mean, originally, see, my contract was for a year, which actually is quite a long time for an actor, to be involved in something for a year. And when they first offered me the role, it was sort of promised to be a very different kind of companion, because the companions up to my appearance had been the usual sort of, little girl types running around after the Doctor. But they said that Romana was going to be a different kind of character, very independent, very intelligent, on a par with the Doctor. In fact, she was a Time Lady as opposed to a Time Lord, So it sounded interesting to start with. And then the first episode was quite well written in that respect. The second episode started to tail off, and then by about the third or fourth, I realised that the character was not going to be what they'd promised. So that was reason number one. On the whole, you see, I think the companion in the show is very much a kind of viewpoint for the audience, because there's such a lot of technical jargon in Doctor Who. There's got to be somebody who explains what's happening. So in a half-hour format, you've got to have somebody who really, says, what's that for, Doctor, or why did, because the audience need to understand. So I kind of cottoned onto this halfway through, and I thought, well, there's never going to be a companion in this show that is going to be on an equal part of the Doctor, unless they extend the show to like 50 minutes or an hour. So that decided me. So about halfway through, I already knew that I wouldn't do longer than a year. So I told the producer, Graham Williams, because he kept saying, oh, well, blah, blah, blah. And Graham said something very surprising to me at that time, which I've never told anybody before. But he said, well, if Tom Baker left, would you still want to do it? And we'd write your part up to make it more interesting. But I think in retrospect, that was just like a sort of, carrot to the donkey. So I didn't really believe what Graham said. Anyway, when we got to the end of the series, they kept saying, oh, you are going to sign on for another 6 months or another year. I said, no, I'm not going to do another year because, I've already said, that's it, the character hasn't really developed. I'm going to, leave at the end of the series. And they just didn't believe me. They just thought that I would somehow change my mind, And there was no incentive, they didn't sort of offer me these amazing scripts or anything. So by the last segment of the Key to Time, the last 6 episodes, Lalla Ward, who was playing Princess we used to call her Princess Disaster. that was a little in-joke there. And she used to call me Trattoria Romana. But by the time we got to that, Lalla and I were quite good friends, And we were all sitting in the BBC canteen one day. Graham was there, and Tom was there, and Lalla. And Graham said, well, of course, Mary, you are going to do another year. And I said, no, I'm not going to do another year. And Tom was saying, oh, do another year, Mary. It's wonderful, wonderful if you do another year. And I suddenly looked at Lalla and I said, well, hey, why doesn't Lalla play my part, as a kind of joke? And of course, that's exactly what happened. So they took my suggestion seriously. So anyway, that's how the whole thing happened. And it's a long reply to your question, but I think, the points are, A, the role wasn't going to be stretching enough, and B, I just, felt it was enough, really, by the end of the year. Yes, question here. What's your name?
Jennifer.
Who?
Jennifer.
Hi, Jennifer. How are you?
Fine. How often did K9 not do what the little remotes said he should do? I mean, was that the kind of thing where K9 was already breaking down, or did he usually work pretty well?
Did you all hear the question about K9? Well, I don't know if you know, but in rehearsal, John Leeson used to actually crawl around on his hands and knees, playing the part of the dog, and that wasn't part of his contract. It was terrific of him to do it because it really helped us as actors. I mean, to work with a mechanical device was something that I'd never come across in my career before Doctor Who. I mean, I couldn't believe it actually. Sometimes I was standing there talking to this tin dog, But because John did all that stuff in rehearsals, it helped you to relate to a character rather than just a piece of metal. And the dog was fine on a level surface, but if you had a floor like this with little divisions in the middle like tiles, it would stop, because the BBC don't really build things that work, They don't have a very large budget, so most of their things go wrong. The tracer, for instance, that we had in the Key to Time series, was always malfunctioning, and it was just a battery and a stick basically. But of course, BBC batteries didn't work as well as other batteries, so it never worked. So when K9 was going on a level surface, it was fine. But when we had any surfaces that were slightly undulating or up and down, that was a problem. And all the technical guys would rush out, would have to go again and what have you. But on the whole, it did work very well. I think Tom used to get more frustrated than I did, but then I'm an animal lover, so it didn't matter so much to me. Yeah. Oh, question from Kerry. Hi, Kerry.
Hi. Speaking of K9 and Tom Leeson, what was it like working with him as a real person, as Powell?
What was it like working with John Leeson as a real person? Strange actually, because we'd got used to thinking of him as a dog, and my life as a dog. I don't think I was in that scene though, was I? Because we talked about this yesterday, didn't we? I don't think I was in the scene with him. But it was nice. I tell you what was nice was to have him along on location. Because I don't know if you know about how the filming was done on Doctor Who, but the turnaround on each episode is 10 days. So like for the first week or 4 or 5 days we'd be on location, if there were locations, and there usually were. And then the rest would be the studio and rehearsal. So it was nice to have John along on location for a change, because normally we didn't see him. And on that particular location we were filming in a part of England called Essex, which is a very marshy area, lots of marsh. And it's very flat. So there wasn't much to do, but we stayed in a great hotel where Tom actually knew a guy who had a wine bar. So every night we'd rush down to this wine bar and we'd all gather around the piano singing songs. And it was nice, as I say, to have John there, because normally, you didn't see, when you're on location, you get to see a different side of a person, because it's more relaxed. So we got to see a different side of John, and he's quite a riot actually when he's away from home. So it was fun from that aspect. Any more questions? Yeah. What's your name?
Jim.
Hi, Jim.
Hi. Tom used to in his interviews talk about how when they'd get a script, he'd sit down and look at the script and decide if there was anything that he needed to add to it, or anything that would make his character more of the Tom Baker doctor than the scriptwriter had created. Did you get a chance to do that with him at all? Did you have any memories of
Oh God, yeah, all the time. I mean, I don't think there was a single script that Tom and I did together that was as it was written, because in fact we did work very well together as actors, and we did quite a bit of improvisation, so I think in the past, you see, because Tom had been there for quite a while, he was getting to the stage when I joined the show of getting a little bit jaded, a little bit fed up with it. And I don't know if in the past he'd been allowed the complete freedom that he wanted, and obviously it's not a very good thing for an actor to have that sort of freedom that he wanted. But when I joined, I kind of encouraged him, so I used to like, seeing how much I could get him to change his lines and vice versa. So we did do a lot of changing between us actually, and it was fine. I mean, the BBC were great about it. A lot of writers don't like having their work messed around with. I mean, I've just been doing a soap opera in England where the writers insist on you saying the dialogue literally word for word. If you get one word out of place, they're down, you know, saying, listen, I didn't write this, you say this as I wrote it. But the writers were great. I mean, looking back, I realised how lucky we were. But I think Tom was a bit hard on some of the scripts. I think it was partly to do with the fact that he'd been there for a long time. And his famous phrase was that we were creating alchemy. In other words, we were changing four-letter word into gold. So I'll leave you to imagine what that word is. That's what he said it was like. But I didn't think the scripts were quite as bad as he said. But I think, you know, he just got bored and he liked to play around. There were quite a few. In fact, in Power of Kroll, which Kerry was just talking about, we did quite a lot of changing in that, because I think that location was particularly tough. We were up to our knees in water most of the time, so we got a little bit fed up, and we did change quite a lot on that one. And I don't know if you remember was it the, Kerry, you can help me out on this one, the anniversary scene where we wanted to, the Doctor's birthday. Stones of Blood, yeah, thanks. I thought that was it. In the Stones of Blood, Tom and I and John Leeson wrote a scene to celebrate the Doctor's birthday, and we even got props to make the cake and bring it in. When we got through to the technical run-through, we put it in as a surprise for the producer, and he didn't like it, so he cut it. But it would have been nice, I think, because little touches like that would have just made the show, I think, a bit more interesting for people. I mean, I know everybody loves it, it's a great show, but I feel it's a shame that they didn't allow us to get a glimpse more of the Doctor's, you know, personal life, even if, I mean, whether he had one or not, nobody ever knew. But that's exactly what Graham said. He said that you know, having a birthday party would kind of destroy the mystique of the thing. So I don't know whether you agree with that or not. Yes, the little boy at the back. What's your name? Hi, John. What was the most risky scene? I don't think I had that many. I remember one scene where I had to be pretending to be falling off the side of a mountain, and you all remember that scene, right? Of course, I wasn't really falling off the side of a mountain at all. No. But I had to climb up quite a bit of a hill to get there, and I'm not very good on heights. I don't like heights, and it was very windy that day, and I did kind of think when I looked down, if I lost my footing and if I somehow fell in a bad way, maybe I could really, you know, hurt myself and fall a long way. But that was about the riskiest, I guess. It was also quite risky, actually, working in a nuclear power station, because we did a lot of work. Why are you laughing? Why is that funny? We did a lot of work in nuclear power stations, and I always felt a little bit nervous about that, to be honest, because of, you know, radiation leaks, and I never quite believed that you had to have a shower before you went in, and you had to have a shower when you came out, and you went through all these machines, and I just found that a little bit scary. I found that more scary than the heights, actually. But no, apart from that, there weren't any risks. Oh, and the horse riding, of course, that was risky. Now I've started, I think I can find risks in this. Yeah, that's about it, though. Yeah. Another question, yeah?
I have another one.
Yeah.
Just the reason I was laughing, I wonder if maybe you don't have an opinion on this at all, but I'm sure you might. Do you think the show, as it went along, began to write itself in such a way that the budget limitations became so apparent? And if you look, I don't know if you ever looked at the older Doctor Who, the black and white, they tended to aim towards the historical story, the costume pieces. And BBC couldn't do very well because they had a lot of costumes.
That's right. Yeah.
But by the time in the 70s and 80s, when I started watching it, mostly on reruns at that point, the technology was important to the show, that the science fiction part of it had come out and that seemed to be the aim of the writers and producer at that point. And things broke, and they didn't have the budget to make it look like we were falling off the side of a mountain. So all the actors had to...
What do you mean? What do you mean? Sure I was.
They had to play a poker face, and you know, the actors were what carried the show. And
That's true. I'm glad you said that, actually. Well, that's very true. Very true.
At that point, I think the show was more interesting when you were dealing with just the interaction between the Doctor and the characters, his companions, or the enemies, other than some sort of special effects attempt that would either be an overexposed explosion that leaves those funny little green spots on the screen. but I mean, you still love the show.
Yeah.
But do you think that was there any interaction between Tom and yourself and the producer as to why don't we cerebral level with the show and try to get to the interaction between the characters.
Well, yeah, that was the intention actually of the relationship between Romana and the Doctor. That was what it was meant to be, and I think it started off, very promisingly. As I said before, one of the reasons why they didn't explore the relationships before was because somebody has to be a kind of mouthpiece. But also, looking back now, I realise, the show was written by men. There were no female writers on it. And I'm sorry to be sexist, guys, but there are very few men who A, write well for women, and B, write well for strong women. And Romana was a very strong character. She did sort of fizzle out by the end of it. I did try very hard to keep it going as much as I could by making my own suggestions, but it's very hard, when you're actually working with a male lead, male director, male writer, predominantly male crew. You get sort of a little bit outvoted because you'll say, well, why did I say this? Or I think Romana would say this, and the guys would say, oh, no, I don't think so. No, let the Doctor help her out of this one, And it's a sexist thing, and unfortunately, it's still predominant today in a lot of drama and so on. So I think it would have been interesting to have that interplay between the characters, and as I say, it was what we're aiming for. Also, I think Tom felt a bit threatened by it, because Tom was used to carrying the show. He was used to, the little woman running around behind him, and that's kind of what he wanted. Even though intellectually, I know he realised that it would have been better if we'd have had more of a, cerebral interchange, as you said. But somehow he couldn't really let go of the way he'd been playing it. He liked the way he'd been doing it, and he knew he was leaving. He knew it was going to be quite soon that he was going to go, because we used to talk about it quite a lot. So I've forgotten what the question is now. What was the question? Oh, about the interplay. Well, yeah, it would have worked better, but for all those reasons that I've just said, I still think that looking back on that season, we had quite a lot of it, just because we did work well together. There was quite a lot of chemistry there, so I think we did the best we could, really, considering that, as you said, the budget isn't great, and unless you can pay for millions of pounds of special effects, it's never going to be as good as something like Star Wars or the things that were coming out at the time that I think influenced the the technical side. Another question, please. Come on now, there must be something you're dying to ask. Yeah.
We don't hear much about what's going on now in the UK. Are they doing anything with Doctor Who, or is it gone forever, or are they going to do something to
Oh, well,
see, or...
the last I heard, Spielberg's got the film rights, you know that, don't you?
I've heard that.
Yeah. And the last thing I heard, that originally there was going to be an actor called Eric Idle playing the Doctor. Eric Idle from Monty Python. Can you believe it? Yeah, talk about weird casting. He's a great guy, but can't see him as a Doctor. Or maybe you can, I don't know. The next thing I heard, and this was like a couple of weeks ago, is that there's a British actor called Simon Callow who's playing it. Do you know who he is?
Yes.
Yeah. He was in, Four Weddings and a Funeral, thanks. And, anyway, I can't remember, but you know what I mean. And that again is for the Spielberg version, and I think he's doing a series. He's doing it as a series, but I think it's going to be all on film, and each episode is going to be about an hour. But the television rights are now owned by the producer husband of an actress called Carolyn Munro, who's a British actress. Don't know if you know her. Yeah, do you remember those Sinbad movies? Yeah. Anyway, she was in those, and her husband has now got the rights, and I think he's trying to get a big part built up for her, either as a companion or, I don't know, maybe even as a Doctor. So that's the latest I've heard on Doctor Who, but I don't know whether they'll actually do anything with it or not. Yes, Tim. Stage? Well, just recently I've been working in a soap opera in England called Brookside, which you don't get over here, and I don't think you ever will get, actually, because they're not very good at selling it. But it's a prime time soap, top of the ratings on Channel 4, which is the fourth commercial channel. And because of the high profile I've had in that, I've been offered a lot of scripts recently for touring, but having been in this show for nearly 2 years, and it's all based in Liverpool, so I've had to leave London and live up in Liverpool during the week, come back at weekends. I feel like staying at home for a while, so I'm not going to do any more touring. The most recent thing I've been offered actually is a play that will be made in London staged in London rather early next year. And that's a play called Old Acquaintance, which has been made into 2 movies. The first with Bette Davis, and the second with Candice Bergen and Jackie Bissett. I don't know if you saw. They weren't called Old Acquaintance, but I don't know if you. I think one was called Old Friends or something. Do you know about that, Horace? I thought it might be a film buff. You can help me out here. Horace doesn't know what I'm talking about. Never mind. Yeah, that. Yeah. Well, yeah. If I could remember the titles, I'm sure you'd have heard of it. Anyway, Friendship doesn't come into mind now. Best Friends maybe it was or something. The play's called Old Acquaintance. Anyway, so that's the next project I'm doing in London, and I've also been offered a play about a character called Angela Coots, who was a historical character, who inherited a very large bank, which is like one of the biggest, oldest banks in England, called Coots. So that's another play that I'll probably be doing next year. Yeah.
Have you tried to seek work in America with Liz a little bit?
I tried to seek work in America. I haven't actually, no. I mean, about 6 or 7 years ago, I did go to LA because I had a film which came out and a TV series, and I had an agent that I found in LA. And I did think about, settling in the States. And at the time, my husband was changing jobs, and he said, "Oh well, it's a good time. Go and try it. See what happens." So I came over to the States, and as I say, got an agent. And at the time, a very good friend of mine, a director called Roland Joffe, who directed Killing Fields and The Mission and all that sort of thing, was also living in Beverly Hills, and he had me over to stay for a few days, and we talked about possibility of staying on. I said, well, what do you think? Is it a good idea? Because I really didn't have an idea about what it's like living and working in America, especially as a British actress, because unless you can do the American accent, you're going to be a little bit different. And he said, well, if you're prepared to sit around for 6 months, give it your whirl. He said, but I know you're Mary. He said, you're not going to sit around doing nothing for 6 months. And he was right. So coincidentally, at the same time, my husband rang up, and he'd just been offered a new job in London. So I thought, oh well, fate's against it. And I flew back, and I didn't think about it anymore. But I would like to work in the States. I think it'd be fantastic, because I love America. I always love coming here. I much prefer it to England, actually. I shouldn't really say that, but I do. And if there was something that was like a vehicle that I could come over to promote, or I don't know, do something over here, yeah, I would love to. And you're right, it does pay better, because the BBC, not renowned for their generosity, but never mind. Yes, Horace, I knew you'd help me out, you see. It's great. You've been waiting, yeah, you've been saving.
Well, first I wanted to let you know, just about the same time, going through the power plant.
Yeah.
This venture, 1 goal, 3 mile, almost down.
Mm-hmm.
So some of us were laughing for a second. You were in the right power plant, not the wrong one. But you described yesterday working pretty steadily over the years now. But after Doctor Who, right after, did that help you? Or did that hinder you?
I don't think it really did either, because I think I was the first actress that they'd had in the programme that actually had an established career, because I was under contract to Columbia Warner for 5 years as a young starlet. And I'd done quite a number of feature films in England and in Europe. So when I got Doctor Who, it was kind of like a lot of people knew me for other things. And I found after Doctor Who, a lot of people didn't even realise that I'd done it. There are people who were in the business in England who don't watch the show, don't know much about it. So I think straight afterwards it didn't hinder me, but I think it was like years later, because of all the publicity that they always do about Doctor Who and the sort of promotion and stuff. In a funny sort of way, I don't know what it is. I think people maybe tend to take you less seriously when you've been in a popular programme. It's a kind of English snobbery. I don't think it works so much over here. I think over here, you tend to get actors who are either film actors or TV actors, and if you're in a television soap, it seems to me quite often that you don't work in the mainstream movie business. I don't know, that's how it appears to me.
It's changed a lot.
Has it changed? Yeah. Well, it's not the same in England in that respect. I mean, people change between theatre, film and television, but I find that if you've been in anything popular, and your pictures in the papers a lot, you know, and people know who you are, if you're visible, you tend not to get serious work, what is termed as, you know, I don't know, Shakespeare or Greek tragedies, you know, and all the rest of it. It's because the English are very snobby, really. They think that if you're earning money, you're lucky enough, you know, you can't do anything else. But I don't know, I mean, I haven't really consciously thought about it. I don't think it's particularly constructive to think about it, but I think for a lot of actors it has been a hindrance. It has been a hindrance. Also because of the content on the show, you know, because it is pure fantasy. People don't know how to cast you, know. I mean, you walk into a casting session and you've just been playing an extraterrestrial, you know, I mean, where do you go from there? So, but I think because I had a career before, it didn't affect me as much, no, it didn't affect me. Yes, one question.
I read an essay by Tom Baker that he wrote after he finished the show.
Yeah.
And it was published in a 25th anniversary book called The Doctor Who File. And he wrote that during the time that the show was being filmed, he was very conscious of that visibility that he was talking about, especially toward children, and how children looked at the show and looked at the Doctor. One of the things that he said that sort of really opened my eyes to the responsibility that he seemed to feel. This is what I'm meaning for the question. That he felt that, you know, he couldn't go out to a pub and come home drunk on the subway.
Oh, really?
That's my question. Did he adhere to this high moral standard that he wrote about, and was he very careful?
No, he didn't. He didn't. I'm sorry to say, sorry, Tom, but you know, the truth will out. I'm not going to say that he was, you know, the opposite, but I don't know. You know, you have to be fairly careful, but there comes a point as well, you know, like I was saying earlier, when you're on location, you let your hair down or whatever, you have to relax and be yourself. And I have seen Tom fairly relaxed, you know. And I mean, he wasn't sort of, how shall I put it? When there were kids around, yeah, sure, you all tend to, you know, cool it a little bit, but sometimes it's not always possible. But I think he would like to think, you know, that's his standard. I mean, I'm sure that he believes that, but he doesn't always stick to it. I mean, how many of us do? You know, we all have our standards. Nobody's perfect. Well, some of us are nearly perfect. Yes, question over there. What's your name?
Brendan Rob.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Based on that last question, did you feel that you had to keep up some sort of image on and off the cameras while you were on the show?
Did I feel as I had to keep up an image? No, I never do as an actor. I don't.
So it would have been like you could have gone get sloshed in the pub and the heck of it?
Well, no, because I don't tend to do that very much anyway. I mean, I'm conscious. Now I've had a child, actually, I must say I'm more conscious. I'm more conscious of affecting the minds of children. I mean, at the time, I wasn't that responsible, to be honest, and I don't think I've ever behaved badly in front of children. You know, you mind your language, obviously, and you know, you don't fall over drunk. But you know, on the other hand, if it happens, it happens. No. What I am conscious of is smoking. I've never been seen publicly with a cigarette in my hand, even though I do smoke, because I think that's a very bad example to set. So I've got quite a thing about that. But you know, we're all human. I sometimes think, you know, people like to see actors letting their hair down and, you know, behaving badly, because after all, you know, makes everybody else feel better. Am I right? Am I right? Yeah, any more questions? Yeah, go over there.
Just wonder where if you live in town.
Where do I live? I live in London. Yeah. I'm from Yorkshire originally, and I moved out to London about 20 years ago, went to RADA, and now I've lived longer in the south than I have in the north, but I still feel like a northerner at heart. I don't know if you know that in England we have a very strong division between north and south. You know, northerners hate the southerners and vice versa. I mean, it's a bit better now, but there's always a little underlying tension. Because the accents are very different. You know, they all talk like that up north. It's all terribly flat vowels and all that. You know, and in the south it's all, yeah, darling, love it, love it, love it. But yeah, I live in London. Yes, no question.
What was it like working with K9?
What was it like working with K9? I did answer that question earlier, actually. Did you come in late?
Yes, you did.
Oh, well, shall I go through it again? Briefly, it was good because John Leeson used to crawl around on his hands and knees in rehearsal, so he gave us, somewhere to connect to, something to relate to, because when we actually got to shooting the scenes with K9, as you know, it was just a tin dog on the floor, and I think it would have been very difficult if we hadn't had John's help, so that sort of summarises what I said.
What did John's voice then?
Oh, John would actually voice it live in the production. He'd be behind a screen and he'd have a monitor with the dog travelling, and he knew from what he was doing in rehearsal where the dog would stop, well, where the dog was supposed to stop, and where it was meant to do various things. So he had his script with him. I mean, he was lucky because he never had to learn any lines, he could just read them. So he was always there, yeah. And as I say, on film, now, it was different when we were filming because I can't remember what happened then. I think he had to sort of do the lines afterwards because, the BBC obviously couldn't afford to bring John out on vacation just to do a voice. So he used to do them afterwards on that, yeah. Yes, another question.
You were talking earlier about how the BBC was pretty notorious for not spending a lot of money on things like actors, effects, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
When you watch the show afterwards, I'm curious, did the FX and the creatures look better on the screen or in person? They look pretty bad on the screen. They look even worse in person.
I don't know, actually. I think they do look worse on screen somehow. I mean, I'm short-sighted. That's why I wear my glasses. I can't, if I took my glasses off, I can't. Where am I? Who am I? I don't know where I am. So when I was in the studio, I remember particularly the Shrivenzel, the first monster that I encountered, did look pretty scary to me because it was very dark and I was alone with it. Oh, it was so frightening. And it did look scary actually, close to. I don't know, maybe I'm easily scared. But seeing it on screen, yeah, it does look naff. It does look naff, so I think that the special effects probably work better in the actual situation that we're in. Another question? Hi, yeah.
When it came to working on the TARDIS console, was it simply a matter of just picking any button and making it look like you knew what you were doing?
Oh no, I spent a long time studying the TARDIS manual, and I used to go home and read it and practice and memorize all the instructions. Yeah, basically, yeah. It was actually dependent on where the camera was, because the camera guys had to work out where, the best angles were to see. Are you listening to this? Hey, I'm talking, I'm answering your question.
Thank you.
Pay attention because I shall be asking questions afterwards. So, yeah, to answer your question, we did just press any button that was necessary, unless, the camera guys told us that there was a particular position that we had to, use this button or that button. So, why did you think it looked as though we really knew what we were doing?
No.
No. Thank you. Any more questions? Yeah. Oh, yes. John, is it John?
Yes.
John, hi. Again. No, because they could only afford to make one, I'm afraid. It would have made sense, to have more than one. Yeah, it would have made a lot of sense, because then when one broke down, we could have used the other one. But BBC, again, no. We only had one K9. It's extraordinary, isn't it? Hi, another question.
Yeah, some of the other actresses that have been here at the convention stated that the police box that they use on location was really damn musty, claustrophobic. Find it like that? You had to go into it?
I didn't have to go into it that much, I didn't have to go into it, and usually I was in it with Tom. So maybe that's why they found it claustrophobic. No, I didn't find it claustrophobic. I mean, I don't know, I can think of worse places to be than inside that box. What I do find strange is that some conventions, they make one, and I have to step out of it in the convention, and that's weird. That seems rather stupid. But I can't believe I said that. But I think on the whole, I can't remember coming out of it that often. I think maybe I blacked it off. It's so traumatic for me. Can't think about it. Did you have a question? You had your hand up, yeah.
Was there ever a part that you originally turned down and now thinking back you wish you really had done it?
Was there ever a part? Yeah, well, there was actually once. I mean, I very rarely regret things because I tend to think, you know, in the present and the future. I very rarely look back, but there was a part in a Harold Pinter play. There's a play called The Lover, which I don't know if you know by Harold Pinter, which I played. Horace is nodding there. I knew you'd know it, darling. What?
Stage.
Oh yeah, stage. Oh, you were stage. And I played the part already in Rep with a very famous actor called Derek Jacobi. Don't know if you know him. Brilliant, brilliant actor. And because I'd already played it, I thought to myself, oh well, you know, I've been there, I've done that. And it was actually initially in Sweden. There's a very good English-speaking theatre in Sweden. I thought, oh, I don't want to go to Sweden. I don't want to do a part that I've already played. But what I didn't know at the time was the director. I mean, it just shows how stupid I am. The director was Harold Pinter's brother-in-law, and Harold Pinter came out to see the play and liked it so much that he decided to put it on in London. So it ran in London for a long time, obviously, you know, great critical acclaim, and Peter McHenry was playing the part. Do you know Peter McHenry? He's another British actor, has done quite a lot of film. So that's the only one I really regret, because it's something that I would have liked to have done, but mostly, I mean, you get very philosophical in my business because you go out for so many roles, and after a while you kind of somehow psych yourself into thinking that you don't want them too much. You know, I try not to want anything too much now because the disappointment is great. It really is. There are one or two parts that I still think, oh, I'd love to have done that, but I just didn't get the part. But when you turn down a part, it's somehow worse because you've been instrumental in making that decision. It hasn't been made for you. So I think that's about the only one I can think of. Yes, Kerry.
Can you tell us about working with Sylvester McCoy?
Oh yeah. That was a strange experience because have you all heard about this film I did with Sylvester, or is it a bit of a mystery? Blank faces. Yeah, obviously Kerry knows about this film. Kerry's seen it. It's called Three Kinds of Heat. It was an American picture. Can you remember who played the lead in that? What was the guy? No, I'm sorry, I can't remember either. And it was actually an American picture, but it was all set in, well, a lot of it was filmed in London, and some of it in New York, wasn't it? And a lot of studio stuff. And I was playing an international madam, head of a huge vice ring, you know, as I do. And Sylvester was playing, what was it, kind of assassin or something, yeah. And we met, you know, behind the scenes, and we were chatting, and he said, oh yeah, you were in Doctor Who, weren't you? I said, yeah, I was. He said, oh, I've heard about these conventions that you go to. I think, what are they like, you know? So I was telling you about the conventions, and he looked really, really interested. And then about 6 months later, I think they announced he was playing the Doctor. I'm like, aha, it's because he wants to go to conventions. That's why he's doing it, obviously. But it was funny because Sylvester had to shoot me in a particular scene, so it was strange, you know, looking back now that you know, the Doctor shot the companion. But anyway, it's just a little item of interest there for you. If you ever see the film, it's a terrible film actually, but if you ever see it, you know, watch out for the scene. Any more questions from this side? This side's very quiet. Oh, yes.
I've got a question for you. Yesterday in your show, you mentioned Shakespeare's Scottish play.
Yeah.
I've also seen Rowan Atkins on Blackadder. Man, she did a whole show on. He kept saying to these actors. It was very funny. Can you explain the background of this to us Americans? You know.
Well, you all know what I mean when I say the Scottish play, don't you? Shakespeare's. You can say it. You can say it, but I can't say it because I'm an actor. I can't say it. Apparently, it's a very unlucky piece. I know when Peter O'Toole was playing it in London, I had a friend in it who played one of the witches, and the most extraordinary, unlucky things happened, you know, during the rehearsal. And the play actually was slated. It was completely planned by the critics, and they said O'Toole's, you know what part was the worst that they'd ever seen, you know, things like that. And I went to see it, and it was just dire. I mean, it was just awful. I can't tell you what it was like, you know. Oh God. Anyway, that's one reason. The second reason, I think, is it goes back to the 18th or 17th century. I think when they were performing it in And again, I think one actor who played it once actually dropped dead on stage or something. I might be wrong, this is something that I'm not very clear about, but it's quite extraordinary how strong the tradition is. Nobody ever, no actor I know has ever mentioned the word. And there's another tradition we have in English theatre, which I don't know if you know about, but when you're rehearsing a play, I think it's mainly in Shakespearean plays, and this is another Shakespearean tradition, when you're actually rehearsing it in rehearsal, the last line is never said. The last line of the play is never ever said in rehearsal, so the actor who has the last line will be doing his little couplet, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and then silence. So, and everybody's going, oh, he's not going to say the last line, no, he's not. So that's another tradition, and it's interesting because we do have some quaint little traditions that are carried on, but I don't know why that one. So I haven't really been very helpful, actually. Another question, yeah. What's your name?
Jerome.
Hi, Jerome. Yeah, we met yesterday.
Yeah, we did.
Hi.
One of the things that's happening in London, I just heard about, is the reopening of the Globe Theatre after
That's right.
ago.
Yeah.
Do you, as an actor, look forward to performing in that historical theatre? What do you think that would be like?
I'm not really sentimental about that sort of thing, to be honest. It's just, it would be nice to see it. I think what I'd have to do is maybe go along and see it, or go to a production, get the feeling of it, and then then I'd probably sit there and think, oh yeah, I'd really love to perform something in this theatre. But just off the top of my head, it's not something I'd be very interested in right now. But who knows? Is it open air? Really?
It's open. It's an exact reproduction of.
Wow. Well, you know more about it than I do. I know, it's terrible, but when you live in a city, you really don't appreciate what it has to offer, because you drive past these places and you think, oh yeah, I remember going there 20 years ago, yeah, I'll go there again one day, and you just never get around to it. But a place I do go to a lot, which I love in London, is the Tower of London, which is on the river. It's absolutely beautiful, and there's such a sense of history there, because there's been a sort of fortress on that site for like 700 years. So that's the place that I do go to quite often. I'll go and visit the Globe, and I'll say hello to it for you, Jerome. Yes, any more questions? Any questions? Yes, lady here, what's your name?
Norley.
Norley. That's a nice name, hi.
Thank you. You mentioned that you were from Yorkshire.
From Yorkshire, yes.
I noticed that a great many very good English actors seem to come from the north or the far west.
Yes, they do.
Because they're tougher and stronger.
Yeah, I don't know what it is actually. I mean, the town that I grew up in, Bradford, has actually produced some amazing talent. Tony Richardson was from there, Billy Whitelaw, another English actress, is from there, Albert Finney is from there, Diana Rigg. And I don't know what it is. It might be just that it's a fairly industrial town, and when I was growing up there, it certainly was quite grimy and ugly, but somehow you get to love it, But maybe it's because there's a certain deprivation that your imagination seeks another outlet, because your surroundings are uninspiring. So your imagination gives you that kind of escape route, and that might be something to do with it. And I have noticed too that the Welsh, as you say, produce a lot of fine actors like Timothy Dalton and Richard Burton and Anthony Hopkins. He's my favourite. I love Anthony. And I don't know, maybe it's the same thing, because they have a very hard life there too. They have these grimy little mining towns, mining villages, and the men go down the pits and the women are forever up to their elbows in soap suds, So it could be a similar sort of thing. I think if your life's too soft, it doesn't. I don't know. Maybe it's that thing of having the escape route, as I said just now. I don't know what it is, but I think it might be to do with deprivation. Yeah, you're right. What do you think?
Oh, I know they're very fine actors. Present company included, of course.
Oh, thank you, darling. Thank you. Yes, lady at the back. What's your name? Hi, Linda.
Hi. Since you mentioned Timothy Dalton,
Yeah.
I wanted to mention that I got one of your roles, Jane Eyre.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, you saw that. Great.
I picked up on A&E a few years ago. I play
Yeah.
it all the time.
Oh, you like Jane Eyre, do you? Yeah, it's a wonderful adaptation, isn't it?
Apart from the shoddy special effects.
Oh, what special? Well, that's the BBC again, you see.
Timothy
Yeah.
Dalton's eye was a bit horrible.
Oh, yes, when he was disfigured in the fire. Yeah, I don't remember that very well. Well, that's unusual actually, because the BBC are usually very good on makeup. You know, they train. Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Oh, do you? Yeah. Oh God, that's terrible. Oh, I must look out for that. Maybe I was watching it without my glasses on or something. Yeah, that was fun to do because of course Tim wasn't in the Bond movies, you know, at that time, and it was actually this is something a lot of people don't know. It was actually Tim's first television role. I mean, he'd been in the business for maybe 25 years by that time, or maybe not as many, 20 years or something. And he'd done a lot of theatre. He'd worked at the RSC and he'd done a lot of movies, but he'd never actually done television. And I don't think he's done any television since, which is interesting. But that was great fun to do because I had to learn how to ride side saddle for that, which I loved because I ride anyway. And they sent the BBC do splash out occasionally, and they sent me down to this gorgeous riding school in the country, and I spent about 3 days learning how to ride side saddle. So it was great fun and lovely costumes. Lovely costume there, isn't it? Yes, another question. What's your name? Oh, I'm talking to the guy behind you. Actually, sorry.
My name is Doug.
Hi, Doug.
2 questions. You did say you like to ride. You ever
I
done
do.
any Dick Francis adaptions, or
Have I read any?
or done?
Have I done any? No, I haven't actually. We've had a couple of good ones, which I don't know if you've seen over here. Have they been shown over here?
Dead Cert.
Yes, that's one of them. Yeah. But that was a while ago, wasn't it? That must have been over 8 years ago.
Well, actually, Mr. Francis has just written a new Sid Halleck book.
A new what?
Sid Halleck.
Oh, that's the character. Right. Yeah.
Also, the other question I wanted to ask is, why do you think that there's such a strong connection between people in the British stage who seem to enjoy doing these kind of science fiction projects? You have like Alec Guinness doing the Star Wars trilogy, and you have, say, James Dalton doing Flash Gordon and James Bond. What do you think the attraction is for that?
The money, perhaps? No. I mustn't be cynical.
That's a good answer.
You think, well, Alec Guinness didn't know at the time that Star Wars was going to make that amount of money. And I don't know him, and I know people who have worked with him and know him very well, but he's not a materialistic type of person on the whole. But I don't think he knew that Star Wars was going to make that sort of money. But I think for most actors, to do science fiction is a great release, you know, because you actually have no limit on what your character can do, you know, on what you can do physically or whatever. I mean, what I regret, another little regret I have to mention here, when I look back at the Doctor Who videos, I wish I'd made Romana a little bit more extraordinary, you know, in some way. I don't know how I could have done it, but I played her very straight, and probably because I wasn't all that experienced anyway. But if somebody gave me the role now, I think I could do much more with it. Because science fiction, like, you know, when Tom's performance, when I joined the show, he'd been doing it for 5 or 6 years, and his performance was always so kind of outrageous. You know, what he did with his hair and the way he played with his props and things. And I think that's what actors like about science fiction, because when you get a script which is like a classical role, you know the play, you know the part, and you've seen it done, and you have a kind of preconceived idea. But with science fiction, you can do anything, and it's a great freedom. So I think that's the attraction for actors, because I mean, we're all kids at heart, you know, otherwise we wouldn't be doing it. We love dressing up and pretending to be someone else. You know? Yes. Another question, Gary. Yeah.
How many actresses did audition for the role of Romana? How did you audition for Romana?
Oh, yes, that's an interesting story, my audition for the role of Romana. Well, originally my agent phoned me up and mentioned that they were recasting The Companion, and I said, no, I'm really not interested, you know, I don't want to do it. I don't watch Doctor Who, I don't like Doctor Who, I don't want to be in Doctor Who, so I thought that was the end of it. And then she rang back, she said, well, darling, you know, they're saying she's going to be very, very intellectual and all the rest of it. And obviously the way they presented the part, they were very keen for me to audition, and they saw 200 girls for it. And they finally made a shortlist, and the shortlist got called back, and then they tested 6 of us. And the director, George Spenton Foster, said to me, when you do this scene with Tom, he's getting a bit bored with these tests now. You know, I was like 4th or 5th. He said, just wake him up for me a bit, would you? Instead of just saying the dialogue, go and sit on his knee and put your arms around his neck and say the dialogue into his ear. It's like, oh my God. Anyway, when it came to it, I was so nervous, and I was quite frightened of Tom because he's very scary when you first meet him and you don't know. And he was sort of big and loud and booming. So I chickened out. I thought, oh God, I just can't do this, I don't know this guy, I can't sit on his knees. So I thought, well, that's it, I'm obviously not going to get the part. And I just kind of forgot about it, and we didn't hear for ages. I think it was like 10 days later that they rang out and told me I got the part. And then I was very pleased, obviously, because it's, it sounded that the part did sound very good, and it was very good to start with. I did enjoy it to start with. So it was quite a thrill at the time, and the press did a big thing about it. I had a very small flat at the time, and I think I had about 20 or 30 journalists with their big cameras and flash bulbs came around to the flat, and they all crowded in through the door with bottles of champagne. We got absolutely legless. But the pictures were great. I still got them. It was very nice, actually. It's a very nice memory to look back on now. It's great. Any more questions, please? Yes, and what's your name? Julie. Tui Ling. Oh, hi. Did you all hear that question? Did I have any choice in costumes? Well, I did actually. I had quite a large choice because the first dress that I had, the white dress, there was a very, very good costume designer called June Hudson who designed that. And do you know well, you must have heard of Cilla Black in England. She's a singer. She used to sing with the Beatles. Do you know who I mean? She's very, very high profile at the moment because she's got her own show and everything. And we went along to Cilla Black's dressmaker, who also, I think, designed for Shirley Bassey. So you can, because that dress was so fabulous. So that was the first one. And on the whole, yeah, I mean, I did go along, and we either bought the clothes or the costume designer consulted with me. The one we had problems with was Androids of Tara, because Doreen Jones, who designed that costume, showed me some designs because of the riding of a very ungainly kind of costume, which looked like thick, tweedy type of, jodhpurs, and they were very baggy, and a big coat, and I said, oh, I really don't think I want to wear this. I don't like fabric and what have you. So we got together and we redesigned the costume, and she just said, oh, what colours do you like? I said, oh, purple and turquoise, which is kind of green. And she said, oh, what's your favourite fabric? I said, velvet, and that was it. So she designed the costume. And I get more letters now, I get more fan mail about that particular costume than anything else I wore, so it was obviously a great success, and I loved wearing it. And obviously it was great to ride in as well, because it had a sort of split skirt, it was long, very elegant. And you said you had another question? You're saying that some of the actresses on Doctor Who had to work with scripts that were written for somebody else? Oh really? I haven't heard that before. Who said that? Louise?
They wanted to story for Sarah Jane Smith, and they interviewed them for Leland.
Oh, that's interesting. No, that never happened to me, because the Key to Time series was a kind of one-off thing, and I can't see why I don't know, maybe it was because they'd sort of stockpiled a few episodes beforehand. Again, in the days when the BBC had more money, they have cut back now, believe it or not, hard to imagine, but they have. In the days when they had more money, I guess they could commission the writers to kind of stockpile scripts. They don't do that now. And they might have just had scripts lying around that, as you say, they were going to, was it Liz Sladen they were going to give them to? Yeah. Liz Sladen's scripts then were maybe given to Louise for some reason, I don't know why. Well, I do know why, because I couldn't afford to pay a writer to write some new ones. But on mine, I know that, the episodes weren't written that quickly, the Key to Time series. I think because I was a new character, the writers, decided, or Graham Williams decided that they'd kind of see how my character worked out, and then the writers would write accordingly for me. So, I didn't see the next episodes until we'd virtually finished the one before. It was like a new script and a new story, which I didn't know anything about. Yes, hi.
I remember a scene that never made it into the regular series, had you, Tom Baker, K9, sitting underneath the TARDIS console. You were asking each other what you wanted for Christmas.
Oh, that was an outtake, yeah.
And I was wondering if you remembered what was going through your mind while that was going on.
I'm afraid I don't remember what was going through my mind, actually. No, probably wondering what time I could get home and have my tea or something. No, that wasn't. That was an outtake, which was done. In fact, an outtake isn't really what describes it. There's something that the technicians do at the BBC at Christmas time, and what they do is when they finish recording a particular episode for whatever show it is, they add a little extra because it's a special tape. It's called the Christmas tape, that's compiled for the poor guys and gals who have to work over the Christmas period. So they make up a video. But it's become absolutely notorious, that video. I mean, everywhere I go, people refer to it. And in fact, it was only last year that I saw it myself for the first time. And I was like, God, what was I doing in that? But I don't remember what I was thinking, I'm sorry to say. No, can't help you out there. Yeah, any more questions? Yes.
Monopolized, but Douglas Adams, who did the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, was a story editor on Doctor Who for a while.
Yeah.
Was he on during your...
Yes, he was actually. Well, Douglas wrote The Pirate Planet. That was his script, and I met him on that. And it was nice. It was nice to work with Doug because he was one of the few writers who kind of stayed around a lot. A lot of the other writers wouldn't, you wouldn't even see them. You might see them at the read-through, and you might see them on the technical day in the studio, but apart from that, you never saw the writers. But Doug was around a lot, and he came on location with us, which was nice, and he was always there to, turn to. And I think Tom liked working with Doug as well, because he kind of respected his intelligence. So we had less problem with Tom wanting to change the lines, when Doug was around, because actually Doug's scripts, I think, were some of the best. I think story-wise, I liked The Pirate Planet the best because of the dialogue and all the rest of it. And the characters that he creates are very good. I thought the characters in that were particularly good. Any more questions? Oh, yeah, do you want to tell something else?
This one was very big technical difficulties needed in the dialects, considering I don't think the technicians inside can probably see very well.
I didn't understand the question. Could you repeat it? Oh, the Daleks. I never worked with the Daleks. Never met one, no. Sorry. I've seen one, but I haven't met one. I think I know something about that though, because they don't have people inside them, do they? Or do they? Do they? They do. You see, I know so much about this. Sorry, I can't answer that question. No, ignorance, completely ignorance. Yes.
Was it harder to play Mama or Adelaide or
A princess.
our princess?
What was that? What was the name of that princess? I forget. Thank you, yes, Princess Estrella, yes. Which was the hardest? Well, yeah, the funny thing was, it was hardest playing the android, because I enjoyed that particular story because I got to play 3 parts. I mean, for those of you who all know what, yeah. So I was playing 3 roles there, and I liked playing the princess, because of all the crown and the lovely costumes and everything. It's just like dressing up. No, the android was hardest because it was completely deadpan, so we had a lot of fun doing that particular story because we were filming at Leeds Castle in Kent, which again is a very beautiful old castle, and it was lovely weather, and we just had a great time on that episode. It's great. Another question, please. Carrie.
Have you ever been in a role that you're just so wrapped up in what you're doing, you kind of forget that you're acting this, you almost feel like it's for real?
Yeah, that can happen quite a lot actually. I'm just trying to think. It's not so much that you forget who you are. I think you've always got your feet on the ground, or at least I have. I've never got to the stage where I actually started thinking I was somebody else, but there are things that happen when you're an actor which are sometimes inexplicable, and it's a weird feeling. It's like somebody is working you, like there is somebody who is making you do things. You're not making the decision anymore. And it can be quite scary. I mean, it's happened to me actually in rehearsal more than on stage, and it hasn't happened on film ever. It's happened on stage. As I say, in rehearsal, I was doing a very interesting role about 3 years ago for an avant-garde theatre company called Lumiere & Son, who were quite well known in England. And the writer had actually formulated a new play. But what he'd done was he'd based all the characters in it on classical characters, and I had to play Miss Julie, Strindberg piece, Hedda Gabler by Ibsen, and all the classics, big classical roles from Chekhov to Ibsen to what have you. And it was all the large speeches from all these characters. And there was a point in the middle of that when I really felt in rehearsal that it was almost like flying, it's a very weird feeling. You don't feel as though you're somebody else, but you feel as though what you're going to say next is no longer up here, it's coming from somewhere else. And it was very weird. And it has happened to me on stage quite a few times, but funnily enough, it happened when I was working with Derek Jacobi. I mean, he's a wonderful actor to work with, because there was something, again, that happened on the stage. Sometimes it's like there's a communication between you and the other actor, or there's a communication between you and the audience, and it's not anything you can really explain. It just is. It's almost like a third person is present. I mean, if you're religious, you can call it God. I think there is something that's very close to the spiritual thing, which actors, experience, and which an audience can experience. If you go along to see a really great performance, and it touches you, it's more than the emotion, it's more than the words, it's something else that kind of flies, I don't know, I can't explain it, maybe, you might know what I'm talking about if you felt it. So, yeah, I have felt that, and it's what keeps actors acting, I think, because it's a very, very special, unique experience, very moving. Yes, Horace, I knew I could rely on you.
Actually, the question I have is
Oh, really? Really? Ah, yeah, well, that's interesting, because it might be something to do with the adrenaline then. Because there's such a high charge when you're working as an actor. You really have such a high adrenaline charge that maybe it's something to do with that.
And being very polished.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
I was going to ask, there's quite a bit of difference between rewriting the script and ad-libbing.
Yeah.
And I know it's theater.
Well, you do if somebody forgets their lines. Or somebody doesn't come on stage who's meant to be there. That's happened to me.
But I mean, you don't hold it.
Oh, no, you don't. No, not with classics, certainly. No.
Were you able to ad-lib at all during the or was your alteration just rewriting it?
No, there was no ad-libbing as such. There very rarely is ad-libbing on television. The reason being that everything's timed to the second. There's somebody with a stopwatch who has to time it to the second, because especially on a half-hour format, which Doctor Who was, you have to really, have it down to the nth degree. So that doesn't happen so much on television and film. In theatre, yes, there is a little bit of ad-libbing, as I said, when things go wrong. Usually when things you have to think very fast. I don't know, I did an Agatha Christie play in the West End, which was absolutely hilarious, with an actor called Gordon Jackson, who you might remember from Upstairs, Downstairs. And he was absolutely fantastic on his lines, he knew his lines before we started rehearsal. And he used to drive in and out to the theatre every day. He had his lines on a tape, and he used to play them in the car. So he was really, really word perfect. He was the only actor that never changed a thing. And we played for a long time. We did a year in the West End, which is a long time. And Agatha Christie isn't very mentally stimulating, So it was like we were saying this meaningless drivel night after night. And on the very last night, I don't know what, everybody got slightly hysterical. We all started laughing and changing our cues and doing strange things. And Gordon had this scene with a maid who had to come on, and he had like the vital question of the evening, which the whole plot pivoted on. And he asked her this particular question, and she had to say yes. And he went, of course it was Major Despard, and it was like everything fell into place with this question. And she came on, and because we'd all been laughing and he asked her the question, she said no. And he was like, after a year of saying yes to this question, and his face, we were all in the wings, his face was complete shock horror, and he just didn't know what to say because he couldn't ad-lib. He was so rigid in his lines, he couldn't ad-lib. So of course somebody had to come on, or I don't know how they managed to do it. I think she then said, "Oh no, I don't mean no, I mean yes." But somebody then came on, and he finally actually laughed. I mean, we call it corpsing in the business, and he finally corpsed. And it was just the funniest thing, because he was the last person you'd expect, you know, just to sort of break up under those circumstances, because he was so professional, you know. So things like that are fun. I love it when things like that happen. How much time have we got now? Oh, is this the end? Oh, listen, it's been great to meet you all. Thank you for your very interesting questions.